Welcome to the Movies of the Dam podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter at Damned Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi's 2014 film, What We Do in the Shadows. The movie is presented to the viewer in a mockumentary format, with a documentary crew following four vampire roommates. The group ranges in age from 183 to 8,000 years old, and they are in constant struggle to keep up with technology and fashion. Their daily routine ranges from fighting over household chores, mocking local werewolves, partying at nightclubs, and searching for people to kill. Their normal life is turned upside down as they begin to socialize with new vampire Nick and his human friend Stu. These new friendships cause constant headaches for the group, including Nick constantly telling people he's a vampire, Nick tipping off a vampire hunter about the group, and the group having to save Stu during an undead masquerade ball. During the aftermath of the ball, Stu is attacked by the werewolves and is turned into one himself. This, however, allows the vampires and werewolves to reconcile, with the groups becoming friends. John, before we get your opening thoughts on the movie, Ethan, we just wanted to thank you for being here today. Really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this one.
Thanks for having me on again, guys.
So, John, let's hear your opening thoughts on this movie.
Okay, so Vlad, right? No, it was Peter. Peter, the Nosferatu guy. I thought he was 800 years old. He's 8,000?
8,000 is what I wrote down. I'm pretty sure he was 8,000. That's why he looks so much different than the other vampires. Like the other three kind of look like they could pass as humans, where he was, you look at him and he's a straight up archaic vampire, right?
Yes, but if you know the vampire lore, right? That's like he looked exactly like Nosferatu, one of the first the first vampire film ever done.
Yeah.
Then you had Vlad, who was kind of like Vlad the Impaler, but he was Vladislav the Poker in this one, which is a take on Dracula, right?
Love it.
And then you had Deacon, who was like the quintessential party guy. He's almost like the Anne Rice vampire Lestat type thing. And then you had Viego, who's like the shy nice one. He's the kind of the micromanager, and he also reminded me of Louis from Anne Rice's Vampire World.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was pretty funny. This film was surprising to me. It was funny. It was clever. It was done fairly well. It had like a Real Housewives kind of vibe to it, but with vampires, and each character was very realized, and great acting, and I like how some of the so it'd be like the restrictions on vampires, right? So like the garlic and the sun, like all that stuff was taken into account in this film and then put in a funny way. Right, so they were trying to go out nightclubbing, and they had to be invited into the bar. Like that's,
and you're right. This movie had so many funny parts where it takes kind of all these different things with the vampire lore, and they find kind of a funny way to present it as for why it would cause issues in the modern world with just trying to interact, right? But I to echo your words, this movie was very funny, and it hit the ground running. Like I loved how this movie started off, and they kind of had that flat meeting to begin with, where they wanted to bring up about how the vampires weren't pulling their weight with the dishes, and then I think the camera kind of focused at one point to the chore wheel, and he's like, the chore wheel hasn't moved in 5 years, right? Which is just like so ridiculous, right? It's so funny, but this is something that roommates go through all the time, and if you were a vampire and you had other vampire roommates, you'd be having conversations like that, right? And just to add on to what you said about going to the club, I loved, and I would have never even imagined this, that a huge issue as a vampire is if you wanted to go and be in public, you couldn't see yourself in the mirror to get ready. So I thought it was such a funny scene when they're trying to get ready for the bar and put this clothing on, and to see what they look like, the other roommates would sketch them. That had me laughing. I thought that was so creative, so original. Ethan, what were your thoughts on this movie? Were you a fan?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. One of my favorite parts is when they first meet the werewolves, and they're like, "It's my good ugly guys," and then just have like a cat fight, kind of not even touching, and then like one of the werewolves swears, and he goes, "Guys, were werewolves, not swearwolves. And
I actually wrote down that exact
was
line.
so funny, man. I loved it. Yeah, the main guy, what was his name? Viego. He wrote and directed this with the other dude. He did Thor Ragnarok too. So when I heard about that, I was like, okay, yeah, this is probably gonna be pretty good. And yeah, he has a real sense for comedy. He transformed Thor into an actual a really great character from someone who's kind of just mad before, and he did a great job with this too.
And I guess based on the success that something like this brings is how he ended up moving on to do Thor and that type of thing. So this to me was a big launching pad for his career. But with this movie, it's like going into it, you think, oh, this must just be like a crummy independent film. But I didn't think that the visual effects were lacking at all. Like I really loved that scene kind of when Nick hadn't been turned yet. And they're kind of tormenting him by chasing him around the apartment. And there's this kind of a cool thing where like the vampire kind of comes out of his backpack as he's wearing it. I thought the special effects were great throughout this movie.
Yeah, and remember Vladislav who liked to change into animals, but he could never get the face right.
Oh yeah.
So he's a cat on the couch with his face.
It made me think of like the cat from Alice in Wonderland a little bit.
Exactly like that. That's actually really true. But yeah, like there's a lot of great one-liners in this, and a lot of great setup for those one-liners. Like going back to the chores in the flat. The one guy was like, Vladislav was like, I'm so embarrassed to bring people back here, and the other guy's like, what are you embarrassed? But you're just gonna kill them anyways. And he's like, and he just shrugs. Yeah, you're right. That type of thing, right?
But it's like, yeah, but we want to. What did they say? Yeah, but like we want them to enjoy their last few minutes.
Yeah,
like when he brings that one girl back and he's trying to serenade her. I think he's playing like the ukulele or something like that.
Yeah.
And then like as he's playing the ukulele, he starts to put newspaper down.
That was the best
because he tells him like, why can't we just put some newspaper down first?
Yeah, protect the couch.
But then he goes to bite her and he hits the artery or something like that. And this is something that
everywhere.
should be like terrifying, blood spurting everywhere, but it's so comedic as he's trying to like kind of like put his mouth in the way of it so the blood doesn't spray everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just great scene, great movie.
Well, a good part I liked was when they're talking about having to have virgins to eat, right, to feed off of. And it was the Vladislav. He goes, I think of it like a sandwich. You'd enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it first.
Yeah, and how ridiculous is that, right?
You're like, what?
And then when the minion, I want to call her, the one who wants to be turned into a vampire, but they're just kind of stringing her along, right? And she kind of arranges the dinner guests for her, right? And they bring the dinner guests over, and then he finds out that they're not virgins, and she's like, what? You're telling me this guy isn't a virgin? Like that type of thing, right? But again, as I said, like, you would think this movie would be so predictable, but it's not. Like, for example, when Nick eats that French fry, I did not see that coming. Remember, he had the huge puking fit? Like, Ethan, did you see that coming? Like, was I just out to lunch there?
Well, no. The good thing about formatting a movie this way is you don't really have to have any concrete plot. And it's a mockumentary, so you can jump from kind of bit to bit to bit while having a kind of bare bones plot following along, and that's what's so great about these types of films. So yeah, I didn't see it coming. I really wasn't trying to predict it. I was kind of just sitting there enjoying. I was laughing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because you kind of, as you said, there isn't a strong plot. So as you're watching this movie, you have no way of knowing if it's coming to an end or not. So it's just kind of following their everyday lives, right? But I guess they were kind of talking about that big undead masquerade ball that they were going towards, which brings me to what I thought was one of the greatest lines of the entire movie. So they have Stu there, their undead friend, and he's at the bar and he's he's at the masquerade ball, and he's kind of talking with a zombie, and the zombie, I think, looks at him and says, "Are you predeceased?" I just thought that line was so good, was so funny. And John, as you already said, there's so many good one-liners all throughout this movie.
I love Stu the whole time. Like I love the scene when they're like, after Nick kills Peter or whatever by telling the vampire hunter, and they're like at the trial kind of thing, and they're sitting there, and there's like, okay, rule number 1. What the first thing you broke was bringing a human in here, and then the guy goes, Stu's all right. Yeah, Stu's all right. All right, we'll cross that off.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're talking about it, and they all love Stu, and he's showing them all this stuff. Like it was so great. Yeah.
And I love Stu's character too. And what I thought was interesting in doing a little research about this So Stu is actually an IT technician in real life, and he's not an actor. He's a high school friend of, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the one writer director's name, YTT. And so he was initially told that he was just going to have a bit of a bit part in the film, so that he would act more normal and just be kind of like a regular guy. And he didn't even realize how big and important his role was until he saw the final cut of the film on opening night. How
Yeah.
crazy is that?
That is pretty crazy, and he was good to watch. And what I liked about Stu's character is that he didn't do anything to make him special. He didn't do anything, that made him especially likable or anything like that. He was just the guy in the background that everyone liked. He
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
do anything wrong. He barely had any lines in the film, really. Like, he didn't talk that much, right?
But he had these facial expressions to him, and the only thing I can compare it to is, I don't know if either of you ever watched The Office, just Jim from The Office, the way he would look at the camera sometimes, and that's what I felt like we were getting from Stu. Is just he would just, as you said, just kind of be in the corner there smirking or looking away and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like when Nick was first trying to explain to him that he was now a vampire, and he's like, you know how we've always played tennis and you always beat me, but then recently I've beat you the last 3 times. Like, it's just so wild and crazy the way things were explained in this movie. Like, these writer directors, like, just, it's epic. That's all I can describe. It's so original. Like, I can't imagine coming up with this type of stuff.
Well, they had a good background, right? So you already have kind of the frame when you think about it. Anyways, when I think about it, it's like you already have the framework, right? So you hit it before, right? So you have all these restrictions. These are vampires. This is what vampires can and can't do according to legend or according to evolving theory, because there's always some new stuff that comes along, right? And so how do we incorporate this into modern
Into funny bits.
into funny modern times, right?
Yeah.
So you have the framework there, and you can do all sorts of things. And I bet you they messed around with a lot of this stuff.
And they did. And so again, more stuff that I looked up and found here is that afterwards, during all the interviews and stuff like that, it was revealed that they had so much footage that they filmed with this, because as you just said there, John, they were kind of almost throwing things against the wall and see what stuck, right? But they were able to make 3 versions of this film. And so they described one version as just being complete jokes and gags, one kind of being more focused on story, almost maybe a little bit more serious, story-driven, and then kind of the final one, the one that we've all seen, is kind of a mixture of the two almost. So I would just almost love if some extra like deleted, because I know John, you especially, don't always love deleted scenes, but if we could see an extended version or something like that with more of the gags. Having said that, probably all the best ones made it into the film, but it would be cool to kind of see what other type of stuff that they've developed there. Ethan, any thoughts on that? I don't know if we've ever asked you, are you a fan of these extended deleted scenes, sometimes these director cuts that come out in films?
Yeah, I am, because it's cool to see just the different perspective of what the director wanted, and also you can make up in your own mind what you thought was the better ending or whatever. Like with Get Out, I thought the one Jordan Peele chose was the better one, right? And stuff like that. Yeah, well, like comedies do this kind of stuff a lot of the time. Like the 40-Year-Old Virgin, and there's one scene where they're all drunk, but they're not supposed to be, and that's because they had champagne, because they filmed 1 million feet of film, and that's like 4 times what you normally film, and it's because it was a comedy, they're improvising everything, and they do that in a lot of comedies. So
and you almost have to, right? Because you have to see what works, what's funny, and that might be where they're getting a lot of these great one-liners from. Like, I don't know if you remember after where we thought Stu was killed by the werewolves, and they kind of, the paramedics and the police convince themselves that it's just this like house dog that did all this.
I know.
And he's kind of like leading the house dog away, and they're walking by the ambulance, and he kind of looks and he says, "I have to put the dog down now." And he turns to the dog and he like, "Look what you did," like pointing towards like dead Stu right there.
They brought the dog over to him. It's like, "Look what you did."
Yeah, just like so ridiculous, right? And then just like, I love the ending, just the fact that it was something like, some people are upset about the age difference here. Yeah, she's a 96-year-old woman and I'm 4 times her age. Like,
Yeah.
I just thought that was so ridiculous, right? Because when you look at them, it's obviously a young guy with an old woman. But
Yeah.
Age-wise, yeah, it's so clever. So
I know.
clever.
The reversal on that was very good, and there was a lot of parts in this film were very enjoyable. It seemed to have a monotone throughout, though. Would you agree? Like, for plot progression wise, like it was just like one comedy bit to the other without any real. I didn't find any real tension.
No, and I think that is like the mockumentary format, right?
Yes.
The fact that there's the fake film crew in there filming them and that type of thing is like, it almost, as the viewer, like makes you think, oh, this feels real. And so when you are watching kind of a documentary about kind of people's lives, like it almost came across like a reality show type of thing. It's not going to have like that constant drama that builds. We're kind of just like investigating these people's lives to see how they live their day by day.
Yes. So okay, so for me, it was like, Paranormal Activity was kind of a documentary format type of film, right?
Well, that one was more found footage, whereas this one is a mockumentary because it's set up as if it's a documentary crew filming it.
Yeah, that's fair. But was it a found footage? Like I thought they, like,
They were kind of documenting what happening
Yes.
throughout, right? Kind of like a Blair Witch Project type of thing.
yes.
Where I think the difference being is that the people filming this are set up as a documentary crew. They're not actually characters.
I agree with you.
Whereas in Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch Project, the people filming are actually characters in it. So I think, to me at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, or people out there send us messages, but to me that's the difference between a found footage movie and a mockumentary.
No, I know. I understand that, and I agree with you with the found. Like, I agree to a certain extent, because it didn't really find the footage, did they? They created it, and for that. But I know what you mean. So one has a crew that's there for a certain purpose. It did have a Real Housewives vibe, or with the Real World.
Yeah, it is
MTV
any
vibe.
reality show, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it did have that vibe to it, and because when that happens, I still seen shows like that before, movies like that before, where there is some sort of tension going on in there, or some, you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's like
Like a stricter plot line.
well, not even, because this, like Ethan demonstrated earlier, like, it's not supposed to have a plot line. It's just supposed to be like a day in the life of these guys, right? And how do you convey that, right? And how do you convey, you bring out their characters through their actions, right? So how do you do all that? And you do it through that whole format style. My only criticism of this film is that I thought it was too long.
Really?
Yeah. So I got to the point, like, where it's like, okay, yeah, that joke is very similar to the one I heard 15 minutes ago. I'm kind of
okay.
done with it, right? Like, let's go forward or end it, right? But that being said, I still like this movie. It still made me laugh. It's still, you know what I mean? At no point did I want to turn it off. There's none of that, right? I'm just saying, when I was watching it, I was like, there's parts there where my mind wandered, because it got like the same old, right? For an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes, or whatever it was.
And I can see why you think that, because, and I obviously haven't seen the script, but I would guess that this would be a very loose skeleton script, where they're kind of like, okay, we have these 4 vampire roommates. We're going to see how many crazy situations we put them in. And the big things that are going to happen is Nick is going to get turned. He's going to cause them issues. They're going to go to this masquerade ball. Let's see what type of situation we can put them in. Did you have those same feelings, Ethan? Like, did you feel like this was too long?
No, I didn't feel it was too long. It was an hour and 25 minutes, and that's like only 5 minutes above like what you can actually show in theaters, I think. Something like that. It's very, like, there's a minimum you have to meet to show things in theaters. I didn't find, like, there was, near the end, I kind of paused it, because I'm kind of like, okay, well, when's this gonna end? But I was never bored. I noticed, some jokes would be the same, but that, I don't know. It never bothered me. Not really. No.
The one thing when I was watching this that I really took from it is I kept saying, I'm like, this thing could be a TV series, right? Like, I thought, like, you could set up this format with these 4 roommates, and you could get them each episode into a different thing, right? And then as I started to look into it more and more, it actually did become a TV series. And it's going on FX right now, completely different actors set in New York City. But I just thought that was cool, that kind of this is a premise that could go on for a long time, right? And so perhaps maybe it did feel long in a movie format, but you could have similar jokes episode to episode. So, John, maybe that's kind of what you're thinking.
Well, I think Ethan said the exact same thing, really. I don't think he just didn't realize it, though, is that he stopped it at the end wondering when this is going to end. That's pretty much all I ever thought, right? Well, I never, like, and I never, it wasn't a negative, like, it's not a positive either, but it's not, it was just, there's too much of the same going on and on and on and on and on, right? So it's like, yeah, I get it. Everyone loves Stu. He's funny. Nick's the new vampire in the block, telling everyone he's a vampire. He's screwing up. Nick turned the one guy's familiar against his will.
Oh, yeah.
Which was another hilarious scene, right? That was really funny. And you find out the Beast is Vladislav's ex-wife or ex-girlfriend.
Well,
and
you don't even know that the Beast is a female character throughout, right?
No, you don't. You think you don't. You have no idea. You could be a werewolf.
You're imagining
you
it's
don't
going to be some giant beast-like creature,
Yeah.
and it's just yeah.
Even though it's set up to say they set it up where you could think it was a love interest because of the destroyed his confidence aspect and all that, right? So you could kind of guess that, but I didn't guess it at all. I wasn't even thinking of that. I was thinking, okay, well, that's what we're working towards. They're gonna go to this masquerade ball, and the Beast is gonna show up and cause havoc. I thought that would happen, but it didn't happen the way that it did happen. You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea it would be this
how things were going to unfold.
Yeah,
right.
So and I was pleasantly surprised with that, right? And the fight scene there and Stu saving the day, like all this stuff it's really good stuff. And how Stu, because everyone liked him, brought everyone together, right? Like, have these guys, remember the vampires?
The vampires and the werewolves reconcile at the end.
Yeah, and it's only because they like Stu. Like, Stu,
Yeah.
hey, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. But like I said, that was my only thing with it. Is like a couple of points there. I was like, okay, well, how long is this movie going to be? Because you could do that dry wit, sarcastic format for hours. So I was like, okay, well, that's my only criticism of this film.
No, fair enough. And this was a very good film, and the critics agree with us. All three of us like this movie. It's sitting right now at 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score at about 86%. Both very, very high. So this was a film from New Zealand, made with a fairly small budget, which I was actually a little surprised about because of how good I thought the special effects were. Budget was $1.6 million, ended up bringing in 6.9 at the box office. I think, me personally, this film has probably developed a bit of a cult following, so I think that a sequel would do very well. In doing some of my reading, they actually did try and put a sequel together, but it wasn't going to be based on the vampires. It was going to be based on the werewolves. And so the original working title, they had two. The first one was What We Do in the Moonlight, and the second one was We're Wolves. It's spelled like We Are Wolves. So it's kind of like werewolf. Like, yeah, I can't even say it properly, but you get what I'm saying there. But because of the popularity that this thing kind of grew, and because of how good it was, they actually started a TV series in New Zealand about it, but it was based on the police officers. So with that, they called that Wellington Paranormal. So it's based on kind of those two officers, the male and the female, who showed up to the house there. Great scene, by the way, when they're hypnotized and the vampires are doing ridiculous things, but they can't see the ridiculousness for what it was. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then obviously as well for the new FX series by the same name, What We Do in the Shadows, based in New York City, which I got to check out, to tell you the truth. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but based on how much I like this movie, I got to check that one out as well. 96, Ethan. Too high for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I liked this movie. It was fun. It was funny. Didn't blow my hair back, though. I'd give it around an 8.5. But I had a question.
So like an 85 out of 100.
Yeah.
Oh, that's still really high, though, right?
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. Didn't blow my hair back, so it's not in the 90s. But I actually had a question. Kind of, I wouldn't call it criticism, just kind of like maybe I missed something. But in the beginning, they had like the words popping up and stuff, and it says all crew members were given crucifixes, right?
Yeah.
And that was so the vampires wouldn't eat them, I thought.
And,
right?
and then I think it said crucifixes, and there was an agreement made that they wouldn't be harmed or something.
Yeah, but then later in the movie, like, they couldn't even look at a crucifix without having to cover it up or whatever. But they can look at the crew members and stuff like that. So,
oh, good point. I wonder if maybe the crucifix was like tucked under their shirt or something like that.
That's what I would think, is because you didn't see the crew members at any time, so you don't know how they were wearing it or what they were doing, right? Or how that all came about. And that's another thing I thought about with the crew members, though, only in this regard. But we've talked about this before. When it's a horror comedy, right, like a comedy horror or whatever, you forgive a lot of lot of plot inconsistencies or just things that you think don't really make that much sense, right? So one of the things is like it's clear that people didn't believe in vampires, right? Like in the movie,
Like you're talking about the general public.
general public,
Yeah.
right? So the crew members did, which is strike one, right? And then two, they're watching these vampires murder people,
And they're just cool with it.
right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Once again, who cares? It's a horror comedy, and that's not really, But I'm just thinking, for me, I'd be like, that's the only thing I thought of it when I was watching the film. Like these guys are cool with this, random murders.
Yeah.
So
Even though this movie did a good job of like the subject of murder is a dark subject, right? Like killing
Yeah.
people, but they made it comical, and it's like,
I know.
how did you do it? How about when they ran across the two young girls who were vampires?
yeah,
And it's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, catching pedophiles again, right?
yeah,
And so they did stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then the comedic scene I kind of described before, where he's playing the ukulele, he's trying to get her to enjoy her last moments of life, putting the
Yeah.
newspaper down, and then the arteries going, and the blood is just spraying. Like
yeah.
they did such a good job of
They did a
twisting
great
it,
job.
where that thought never crossed my mind about, yeah, these crew members are just sitting back and watching murders, because it didn't feel like murders. It felt like comedy the entire time. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So and like that's bringing that back. It's like another good scene where Vladislav is like, looking through the window and trying to get that guy to.
Oh, like I'm
He's
gonna
like,
use
"See
mind
me."
control to get him to open the
And
door.
and the guy opens the door. He's like, "You want to come in?" Yeah.
All right, so we heard from Ethan here, John, but you, buddy, 96 too high for you?
Yeah, definitely too high. That being said, though, and I've talked about this before. Like, what do I try to judge a movie on? What was the premise of the film, and what do I think they were trying to accomplish, and whether or not they were successful at it? I think they were very successful at this. What they were trying to present, I think they did a great job of it. Great job.
I might even say this is as good as it gets for horror comedies, in my opinion. But go on, and I'll talk in a second.
Still no Tucker and Dale for me. I really like.
I know
Tucker
you
and
guys are
Dale.
gonna hate this. It's on par for me. I thought that this was as good as Tucker and Dale.
No, see, because at no time was I watching Tucker and Dale going, okay, when's this over?
Okay.
Right? And that's the only thing the only really thing I have against it, right? But still, it's like for what it was trying to do and what it was and how it planned out. I'm fairly happy giving it a 90.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna be right there too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be right around 90. I'm not going 96 with the critics, but I'm also not going as low as the audience score with 86. But I'd probably be right in the middle there between the two, right?
Mhm.
Because that's how good this was. So obviously, John, you just said you didn't think this was as good as Tucker and Dale. Ethan, are you kind of you're favoring Tucker and Dale as well?
I haven't watched Tucker and Dale for a couple years, but I remember when I first watched it, I absolutely loved it. I think I watched it like twice in like 2 days or something because it was so
that good.
it was so original and it was so fun, right? And like this movie was great with its twist on the vampire lore, and it did an excellent job of what it was trying to do. But it comes close to me for Tucker and Dale, but it doesn't. It's not on par. It doesn't go above.
I guess the one reason why I think that it is equal with and could be superior is just like I think there is so much more potential with this one. So kind of as I was alluding to, that I think this could be a long-running successful TV series, where I don't think the Tucker and Dale premise could be a long-running successful TV series. And I know in doing my research, they've only made one season so far on FX, and they have a second season planned. But I could see this going for a while. But I guess that's not what we're judging. We're not judging the premise. We should be judging the movie as itself.
Yeah, like I don't care if movie spawns 1,000 sequels. I'm more concerned about what did it show me at that time.
No, fair enough.
Right? Yeah.
Well, fellas, it's pretty obvious we all like this. We all gave this really high scores. A lot of good things to say about it. Anything else to add, either of you?
I have nothing to add about this film.
Nope, I'm all good.
All right. Well, please check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram @DamnMovies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us
Maybe
an
not
email.
Alien 3, but yeah, go on.
Not Alien 3, apparently. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first 2 novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers, and his new novella Balance is also available on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, people. My first book, Dollhouse, was just hit #1 on Amazon Canada, and it was up there for 2 days. So I was really excited about that, and I want to tell everyone thanks for your support. And if you're listening to our podcast and you like it and have some time on your hands, please leave a rating. It really helps us out. And other than that, have a great week. Be kind to everyone. What about you, Ethan?
Just want to say, check out my dad's books. They're awesome. And I wouldn't say that unless it was true, because I've trashed his stuff before. So thanks for having me on, guys.